collaboration in technology is so important for business to succeed, why is it that businesses suck so bad at it? Which seems like a pretty dire statement, but I think each person in the room that I've talked to can relate to some facet of that. So with that, I'd like to give a brief introduction to our two speakers today. First is Elizabeth Dukes. So she's the co-founder and CMO of a company named iOffice. She's got 20 years of workplace, essentially management services experience through Pitney Bowes. So that was her test by fire, let's say. She's turned that experience into the engagement that she's currently in as a co-founder of iOffice to help kind of automate and make that sane for the employee experience, which we'll talk about more. She's an author of a book called Wide Open Workspace, period. She's a vivid workplace technology advocate, imagine that. And then she's been a speaker at IFMA, Coronet, Future Offices, Realcomm, you name it. She's probably spoken there if it's in the real estate circuit. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Good morning. Hi.
Our next speaker is Vic Bangia. He's a founder and managing principal for Verum Consulting. He's got 25 years of experience in the industry as well, partly as a corporate end user. So he helped run portfolios for Unical Corporation and Ameriprise Financial. And then also as a senior leadership position in many real estate service organizations. There was a long list. I'm not going to name those. You can do it if you want to.
Usual suspects.
The usual suspects. It's got an acronym. Vic serves on the board, the global board for Coronet, and is a speaker at also a number of real estate events and also an avid writer. So you've probably seen his posts on LinkedIn. If you haven't, once you've met up with him, you can follow him on LinkedIn. So please help me welcome both these two as our speakers today. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to let these two give a little background about their sort of worldview, about how they see the real estate industry and their particular facet of it. And we'll start with Elizabeth, if you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Don, for hosting me. I'm delighted to be in Seattle. I haven't been here since I was 19, many years ago, and I drove in from the airport right at sunset, and it was breathtaking. The colors here are magnificent. I'm from Houston, and we don't have seasons, so this is a treat for me. I am, as Don mentioned, with iOffice. I'm one of the founders, and iOffice is traditionally categorized as an integrated workplace management system, or an IWMS. We meet 3 of the 5 critical components of what Gartner defines, but we're really unique because we do a lot of other things outside of that very specific and narrow categorization. And we were founded on 3 principles, which I think are important for you to know about us. One is we wanted to be able to unleash data. We were serving in a management services role and had a difficult time getting data to be proactive in managing our business. So we leveraged the SaaS platform for our solution. And so we could bring multiple geographic pieces of data into one spot. We also are modular, so we could bring in multiple service lines into one piece. So unleashing data and being able to have deep insights into how you're running your business gives you the power to be successful, 1. 2 is we have a philosophy of being open and collaborative. When we began our organization, there were some things we didn't do, that we had to rely on our customers' other core systems to feed us that data in order for us to perform the functionality within our own application. Also, there was other systems that they had that they really just liked and wanted to keep, so we had to work in conjunction with those. So we have really leveraged that philosophy throughout and feel like that is an imperative component of being successful in delivering employee experience and delivering facility solutions in today's tech world. You need to be collaborative. The third piece was founding philosophy was user experience. That was a critical component to how we executed and brought about the idea of our software. Not only did we had to get facilities people using it, but we had this idea then that if we could get employees interfacing that would improve the overall experience. It would improve integrity of data. It would improve the facilities team's ability to be more efficient and deliver services more quickly. And that was back in the day where the built environment was the focus. You know, that's all we were looking at really was the built environment. And today, that dynamic, that's still there, that's still critical and important, but we have to bring about this whole employee experience, this engagement component. Why? Because it's important, because it matters. If you look at this quote from JLL, it matters because of recruitment, it matters because of retention for your skilled employees. You want to be able to keep your really valued players, you want to attract them, and it matters because of the bottom line, because employees are what generates success for your organization, and you have to create environments for them so they can be more productive to impact the bottom line. Technology really has allowed us to get to this point. That's really what has set us up for the environment that we're in today. It allows you and I to be more mobile, more collaborative in our own work, but it also allows us as CRE and facilities leaders to have the tool sets to more effectively manage and plan our workspaces. So we're in the age or the era of the digital workplace, and that is, Gartner defines it as creating workspaces that consumerize the workspace, allow the workspace to rise up and meet the needs of the employees. This is a tremendous opportunity for us in the world of the workspace, because not only can we create positive employee experiences, but with technology, we can really bring more to bear on managing that workspace and make it more efficient and valuable to the organization. So as we see it, the digital workplace is a strategy. It encompasses many things that iOffice does not touch, but the thing that we're primarily focused on is creating smart workspace environments. And as we've defined the employee experience as it relates to the smart workspace, we kind of put it in 4 buckets. And this is just a way to define it. But in any given day, an employee, the goal of the smart workspace is to help the employee better connect their work with the workspace. And in any given day, there are 4 actions, generally speaking, that they need to take as it relates to the space. They need to find, reserve, request, and receive. Find people, find spaces, find coworkers, find events, find information. What's going on? Are we having social events? Is there an award? Reserve, either manually or intuitively based on the infrastructure of the space. Request, comfort, service, receive. I have a guest in the lobby. I have a package that I've received. So how do you do this? This is a lot of stuff. What we see, and I am way dumbing this down, this is very, very minimized, but these are kind of your common workplace technology systems, at least the ones that us in real estate facilities frequently touch. You've got IWMS, you've got ERP systems, IT, HR, reservations, energy optimization. There's lots of stuff out there. Some of these are working really well. You've invested in them. They're giving you good data. They're giving you value in your operations. Some of these are okay, not working so great. Some of them are siloed, some of them are integrated. The point is, regardless of your makeup, you've made an investment. Some things you're willing to change, some you're committed to, or maybe stuck with is a better term. But there is data within these systems that you can pull out to give to the employee to help them better function inside the workspace. I thought a good way to explain that would be how a customer that was enormously successful creating these employee-centric workspaces, I thought that would be the best way to do it. So McKesson is one of my customers, and we make up a piece of this, but we are by no means the whole solution. So I'm not trying to steal the thunder here. I just want to talk about what I've seen successful companies do when transitioning into these more employee-centric workspaces. So McKesson, their goal was twofold, and I believe it's pretty much the goal of all of us, is creating these employee-centric workspaces, but also creating environments that are operationally successful, that we can get good insights for planning for the future. So those were their goals. Their challenge was they had 52 different systems managing their portfolio, their property management, all of the real estate and facilities functionality. So it was impeding their ability to even have one congruent interface for their employees. It was they were not integrated. There was no data sharing. So they couldn't accomplish their goals. So the very first thing that they did, and Vic is going to talk a lot about this as well, and even more so than me, but they really created a collaborative team across all the critical components of delivering on this: IT, HR, and CRE and facilities. And one of the ways they did that was by establishing a global workplace leader that sort of transcended all these three buckets. She came out of the CRE and facilities group, but her task was to create a workplace environment and to liaise with all those other groups to support the execution of those employee experience and create standards across their global workplace. I think this is enormously helpful position. And again, Vic's going to talk more about that. The second thing they did was they did outsource to a predominant CRE outsourcing provider, and leverage their knowledge and their tech stack to help streamline. I think 52 went down to 8, if I can remember all of the technologies. So there was 8 key systems with a business intelligence platform that overrode all of those. And those were the standards for how everything would be deployed. And now, truth be told, iOffice was providing one of the key pieces of functionality, IWMS, for one of their larger organizations that was consumed by McKesson about 5 years ago. They'd been one of our long-term customers for 10 years. And after this transition, we lost that business. But they're still a part, because the real estate company was not familiar with who we are. And there's more to the story because they're still a customer. So I'll talk about that in just a minute. And then finally, they were able to leverage the operational systems data through iOffice to deliver on the employee experience solutions. So they created this operational tech stack that accomplished their data analytics, management. They created the foundation to manage the real estate portfolio and facilities effectively. What they were lacking was that employee facing, because all their 8 major locations were moving to more free address, activity-based working, and they needed technology for their employees to help them transition and manage that experience. So that's when iOffice stepped back into the picture, but we had to leverage their IWMS. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. But really, the result was they accomplished all of their goals. They increased collaboration across all 3 groups, which has created an environment for continuous improvement, because they continue to add value and look to each other to add new systems and solutions. They have a much better understanding of their portfolio. We can more effectively plan, creating cost savings and opportunities. And finally, they've become the go-to team for metrics and data analytics. So it's really created a very positive environment. So I want to talk to you on the next slide kind of about how iOffice injected ourselves into this. And this really goes back to our philosophy about being open and collaborative. So we were losing a piece of our business, which was the space management piece and service requests and a bunch of the traditional IWMS pieces of functionality, but McKesson was turning to us for those employee-facing apps that we developed. So they said, you're going to have to leverage our IWMS. We're not changing. And so we said, okay, we need floor maps and employee data. We need real-time updates, and we need employee data. So instead of saying you've got to rip and replace it, we said, okay, we'll just hook on. So that's basically what we did, is we pulled in the data and delivered wayfinding, reservations, hot desking, mail tracking, visitor registration through our applications on mobile kiosks. So we're giving them the employee experience solution using the tech stack they've already created. But the great benefit of this, next slide, is that those employee applications, those employee-facing apps now are generating new data points for McKesson. So we're pulling in data from that employee about how they use things, how many visitors they receive, what types of spaces they're using, and we're taking that data and feeding it back to their tech stack and their business intelligence, so now they have more information to make good decisions about the future. So my point is, my spiel is that even though you invest in an employee, it helps the entire organization. It adds value on multiple levels, not on just the making your employees happy, but it allows you to be more productive as a business leader and really empower your organization.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice.
So to sum up, first of all, thanks to Don and the Building I team for having me here. I have a little bit of a history trivia about my involvement with Seattle. Back when I was with Unocal, as Don mentioned, I was head of real estate for Unocal for a number of years. I was the person involved in the sale of the property that is now the Olympic Sculpture Park. I got a chance to sell that property to the Trust for Public Land and the Seattle Art Museum after the tail end of a 10-year cleanup of the former Seattle terminal property. So was up here a lot in the 90s and love Seattle, glad to be back here. Really great town. So my name is Vic Bangia. I am with Verum Consulting, a company I started back in 2008. Verum, for those of you who don't know Latin, is Latin for truth. And it's a lot of what goes into what I try to do for my clients and really help them understand the truth, get to the truth, because a lot of what you'll see is the foundational work that's necessary for an employee experience initiative really means that everybody on the team has to be aligned. And the type of work we do basically 4 different areas of work. One is in helping corporate real estate departments outsource their real estate services to service providers, and then creating that engagement between the service provider and the client. The second part of what we do is really strategy and operations consulting, and that's everything from organizational design, employee experience initiatives, workplace redesign, that type of thing, really looking at the nuts and bolts of how a corporate real estate organization works and how they work within their own larger organizations. The next one is leadership training and development, so I do a lot of training in things like storytelling and personal branding and things like that. And then the last piece of what I do is what I'm doing right now, which is I get invited to speak and honored to speak at a lot of events like this all over the country and all over the world. So it's really great to be here, and as Don mentioned, I do a lot of writing on LinkedIn, so if you want to link in with me, you can read some of the stuff that I've written about the employee experience, and I can sum up everything I believe about employee engagement and employee experience in this slide right here, which basically is, you know, when you go into the design phase of any project, make sure that you have your employees' interests at heart, because otherwise you're going to miss the mark and they're going to find their way to do what they need to do to get things done. And why not do it in a way that's technologically driven and applicable to what their daily lives are and better for them overall. So this is just a great slide. I think it speaks volumes to the problem that exists today, where a lot of employees feel disconnected with their employers, and there's a lot of sort of pent up sentiment within a lot of organizations that they've got to do something to create better employee engagement and therefore help them recruit and retain employees. So why is that important, and why is employee engagement important? If you look around, research shows that the tenure within organizations for employees has gone down from 4.6 years to 4.2 years. Now that might seem like a small amount, but that's significant. That means that you're going to be losing that sense of company culture, the history. You have a lot more transition going on within your workspaces, and that means that you're always in the mode of recruiting and trying to retain employees. For younger workers especially, workplace experience is paramount. They really want to feel connected to their workplaces, and if they don't, they are going to make a move. And what they need is significance in the workplace. They need to feel connected to the company's mission, vision, values, but they also need the company to sort of roll that out in a way that gives them that connectivity. And what really that looks like from a mega standpoint, a mega picture, is that you become more of an on-demand workplace, an on-demand workforce. And the extreme of that is a mercenary workforce, where really an employee is only there until something better comes along. And if that's the way employees work, and they're very skilled and talented employees, you could have turnover that's happening very, very rapidly. So I think all of these workplace experience and employee experience initiatives turn and translate into something what I like to call real estate as a brand. And I can give you an example of how that works. So, somebody my age, I'm a baby boomer, so I'm just on the tail end of baby boomer. When I go to apply for a job, I would hand the HR person my resume and say, here's my background, here's my experience, this is why you should hire me. I think these days you see a lot more employees and prospective employees coming into their employers saying, here's my background, here's my resume, tell me why I should work here. And that means that real estate and HR have to work together to create a brand around the real estate that is actually a draw for people to come want to work for that employer. And one of the things, and what Elizabeth is talking about, is the technology that drives that as a solution is really, really important, because that's what's going to create that employee experience that's going to make employees want to stay. One more example of how where I see that happening in my hometown in Minneapolis is a company called Be The Match, which is a bone marrow registry nonprofit organization. If you go to their headquarters office, their entire building is their brand. It talks about their mission, their vision, their values. Each employee will tell you the story of why I work there, why they work there, what's important to them about being there. And that connectivity through the real estate as a brand is really important. Now, that's an organization that I think would probably benefit from a technology solution as well to create even more connectivity and stickiness. But you can tell within that organization when you're in the walls of that company that they really, really believe in what they do, and they're all super enthusiastic about the company and what they're doing. So again, I talked a little bit about employee attrition and some of the challenges that recruiters are facing to try to get people to work for those companies. Deloitte did a study that said only 28% of employees feel like their company is making good use of their skills. Now flip that statistic on its head, that means 72% of employees are looking for another job. And that's really scary when you think about how many people within an organization can actually participate in a mass exodus if they don't feel like they're getting a chance to be significant in their workplace. When you say significance, that really means connectivity to the company's purpose, and that's really a very important aspect of employee retention. So one of the solutions to getting there, and where I focus more of my efforts, is trying to think of real estate as an infra service. So really combining real estate with HR, with IT, and with finance to really understand what are the drivers, what are the things that the organization as a whole, those 4 departments, can do to create mobility, to create connectivity, to create sustainability, and preserve some of that knowledge management that's within organizations today, because they're losing a lot of that institutional knowledge. And in doing so, you have to be really careful that you bring in the finance people and understand what their internal benchmarks are and what their goals are for the company from a financial standpoint as well. But when you think about real estate as an infra service, that's actually the collaborative piece that Elizabeth talked about that has to be in place for these things to work. It can't be one department working solo or siloed in order to get something like this done. And a lot of what I experience is that a lot of business initiatives like the Employee Experience Initiative or Workplace Transformation, those fail most often because there's a lot of dynamics in a room that are neglected, and that really comes down to the politics of this. And the title of this presentation is The Art, Science, and Politics of the Employee Experience. Well, the politics part of it can't be ignored. You have to understand the company culture, and you have to understand who the people are within the organization that need to be involved in an initiative like this. And so one of the things that I do is I try to break down those cultural barriers. How many of you have experienced a cultural roadblock to an initiative that you've tried to put in place? Yeah, see, I'm preaching to the choir, right? So one of the challenges that exists is sometimes a strong corporate culture can get in the way of a business initiative that makes practical sense to everybody, but nothing gets done. And so one of the things that I've noticed, especially in the industries that I come from, which happen to be energy and financial services, probably 2 of the most stodgiest, most difficult cultural environments to break down, is that in an environment like that, you can't actually come to the company and say, hey, you know what, I have a new way of doing things. I've got a great idea. Because you'll be asked to take that idea and socialize it broadly within the organization. And chances are that if you start to socialize it broadly within the organization, you're going to run up against a landmine. One person within the organization that is having none of it and is going to basically kill your initiative. And the longer it takes for you to get that past the finish line with that individual, that whole initiative will die. And so, one of the challenges is that you have to create this wide amount of buy-in before you can take an initiative down the road. And then what happens is innovation and these great ideas within a company become formulaic. They become committee-driven. There's no flashes of brilliance anymore. Everybody has to come together, sit down, figure out this innovative solution. Well, if that's how you do innovation, that's not a good way to do innovation. So really what that ends up doing for a lot of corporate real estate end users in the audience, you'll probably feel this, is you become sort of squeezed into this sustaining innovation mindset. You're not very disruptive at all. You're just trying to figure out better ways to do something within the box that you operate in, instead of really looking at something creative and groundbreaking. Okay, so a lot of the ways you can sort of break down those barriers, and we'll talk a little bit about the process I use to do this, but it's really to kind of get people to understand, what you do as a corporate real estate organization, how you're an enabler for the organization for collaboration, how you can actually facilitate those work groups within your organization, how you can actually impact employee retention and recruiting, and then really bringing in those subjects, being an advocate for the subjects of building automation and IoT and all of those other technologies that exist out there. You can be that mouthpiece, you can be that advocate and really sort of that pioneer that's bringing that information into the organization and marketing it across your organization. And I have an example later about how I was able to do that, collaboration with, specifically with the HR department. The next slide. Because, I think it's really important to understand who the influencers are. And in my world, I think the HR department is probably the biggest advocate for change within an organization, because they feel the effects of the opposite of change. So you understand who they are within the organization that you need to work with and to influence, what's important to them, how you're going to obtain buy-in. I call it the influencer web because sometimes to get to point A, from point A to point B, you have to go a couple steps around, and you have to talk to people who know people who can get a message in front of the right person, and then you go directly to that person with that message because you've sort of softened them up a little bit. And then when you get them interested and engaged, then you bring them into something I call a discovery session, which really sort of breaks down those barriers to communication and gets people collaborating. And then again, like I just said, the HR department I think is probably your best advocate for change, because they're the ones who really understand the pain points. And one of the challenges that corporate real estate organizations have, and I've noticed this over and over, is that they don't think outside the org chart. They're really operating in the organizations that they operate in, only occasionally going outside to other departments to try to use them as an influence. So the politics of the employee experience is really thinking outside the org chart.